On the 19th of March 2003, the United States-led invasion of Iraq began, and this involved troops from different nations, but within 22 days the capital city of Baghdad was captured. There were different aims by the coalition of invaders, and this included to allegedly attempt to disarm the nation of weapons of mass destruction, and also to end the regime of Saddam Hussein and bring an end to his dictatorship. The whereabouts of weapons of mass destruction has been heavily debated, and there was no evidence to the existence of these, but the invasion led to thousands of deaths. However, the search was also on for members of Saddam's government, many of who went into hiding, but the Americans were issued with a pack of cards that identified key targets. One of these men who was searched for was Awad Hamed Al-Bandar, a man who was a chief judge under Saddam's regime, and he was a man who was issued with a number of death sentences. He later would be condemned for his crimes, and he was then executed inside of Camp Justice in January 2007. Welcome to the Fortress. Today we look at the execution of Saddam's judge, and as always, to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Awad Hamed Al-Bandar was born on the 2nd of January 1945 inside of Basra in Iraq. He rose to the position of a chief judge within the nation, and he was a prominent member of the Arab Socialist Ba'ath Party. Throughout his time as a judge and official, he then became the head of the Revolutionary Court for Dujal, and one of his most infamous actions came as he ordered the executions of 143 people, sentencing these people to death. But what had these people done? On the 8th of July 1982, Saddam Hussein was visiting the town, and he was there to make a speech in which he would praise local people who served Iraq during the ongoing conflict with Iran. Of course, Saddam Hussein was a dictator of Iraq, so it was a major event for him visiting the town, especially one which was known to have held resistance beliefs and opinions about the government. But during this meeting, Saddam visited a number of households, and he met with many people, and he did finish his speech. The plan was for him to then go back to Baghdad, the capital city of Iraq, and his palaces, and he must have believed at this point that his visit was successful. However, on his way out of the main road of the town, chaos occurred as around a dozen gunmen who used the cover of palm orchards on the side of the road opened fire with their weapons and machine guns. They shot at the motorcade containing Saddam, and 2 of his bodyguards were killed, and then the assassins made a run for it. There was later a firefight in which a number of the attackers were killed and some were captured. In a strange turn of events, Saddam himself interrogated 2 of the attackers before he ordered his security services and army to round up suspected resistors who lived inside of Dujal, along with the wives and families. He even ordered the orchards there to be torn down to ensure that no further ambushes would ever occur there. But there had been 393 men who had been arrested by December 1982, and there were also 394 women and children who were thrown in prison. Many were imprisoned in the notorious Abu Ghraib prison near to Baghdad. But 138 male prisoners, along with 10 children, were brought to the Revolutionary Court after they had confessed to being involved and complicit in the assassination attempt. Over the course of a number of months, the prisoners were moved to detention centres to the west, and there were many who had been killed by their torture and imprisonment. It was Awad Hamed Al-Bandar who ordered the executions of 143 people in the aftermath of the assassination attempt on Saddam's life, and with this the executions were carried out with ruthlessness by Saddam's forces. Saddam signed the court documents provided by his judge to ensure the execution could be carried out. He also ordered the razings of homes and buildings in retaliation. But it was no secret who the man was who had ordered the executions and signed off on them, al-Bandar. When the Americans invaded Iraq, he was someone who was hunted and searched for. He was handed over to the Iraqi government in 2004, and he would later be brought to trial for his crimes. Al-Bandar was accused of crimes against humanity, and he stood in the Iraqi Special Tribunal, and he pleaded not guilty to the ordering of death sentences of those from the town. This was his main charge. He was allowed a defence counsel, and the man who led his defence would one day be abducted from his home, where he was then assassinated. But the court knew he was the man who had carried out the legal precedent for Saddam to ruthlessly execute many innocent civilians, and because of this he was too sentenced to death to be executed by hanging. He was one of a number of Saddam's former allies who was to go to the gallows for his crimes, and he was sentenced along with other co-defendants such as Saddam and one of his half-brothers, Barzal Ibrahim al-Tikriti. The execution of al-Bandar was scheduled to take place on the 20th of December 2006 before 6 a.m. It was believed that he would be hanged alongside the former dictator Saddam Hussein, but this did not occur. This may have been because of the fact that American authorities claimed they did not have helicopters available to fly al-Bandar and the other defendants to the place of their execution, and instead they chose to send Saddam himself alone to the gallows, and the Iraqi government claimed they did not have sufficient time to execute al-Bandar along with Saddam. Saddam Hussein was sent to the gallows, and his execution inside of Camp Justice is one which is often debated to the amount of chaos that occurred within the execution chamber, as he was heckled by the witnesses. Saddam himself went to his execution with fire in his stomach, and he did not go down easily. But al-Bandar was then given a 2-week stay of execution, and his death sentence was initially postponed, and this was confirmed by an official statement, and this may have also been not to take the shine off the fact that Saddam was executed on that day. But on the 3rd of January 2007, preparations were allegedly underway to execute Saddam's half-brother, Tikriti, and also al-Bandar, as this information was leaked to the press. But the information claimed that the execution would take place on the 4th of January, the following day, but it did not occur until the 15th of January. Al-Bandar and Tikriti, Saddam's half-brother, were led into the execution chamber of Camp Justice. They were then taken up to the gallows in front of a group of gathered witnesses. The legal counsel for al-Bandar was banned from witnessing the execution, but things did not go entirely well. The pair were executed together, and Tikriti's execution was botched, as his head severed from his body. He plunged through the gallows at such speed, and his head was taken off, and the two men had been stood side by side minutes earlier, wearing their orange jumpsuits. It was claimed that the pair did look fearful, and al-Bandar also had a hood placed over his head, followed by the noose. The execution chamber this time was rather silent, and there was little heckling, and al-Bandar then uttered a prayer and claimed there is no God but God, and his body flew through the trapdoor when it was released. As mentioned, Tikriti's head came off, but al-Bandar's did not, and he swung wildly on the noose before this came to a rest. Awad Hamed Al-Bandar was later buried next to Saddam Hussein, but he was a man who acted as a powerful judge across the Iraqi nation, and he was a very feared man. He was someone who sentenced to death many civilians for the assassination attempt on Saddam's life, but many of these were of course innocent people, and were executed after being tortured. He was a ruthless man who would carry out anything that Saddam wanted to occur, and he went to the gallows alongside Saddam's half-brother, and let's remember he was someone who should have been executed alongside the former dictator Saddam, but he did receive a brief 2-week stay of execution due to the high-profile nature of the former dictator's execution. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.